This episode of the All About Nothing podcast is sponsored by Everplay Sports and Social Summer 2026 Adult Sports Leagues. Registering now through May 20th for kickball, softball, volleyball, pickleball, bowling, and more. Visit everplaysocial.com for details and registration. Do it now because these leagues will sell out. It's a great way to get off the couch and hang out with friends while doing enjoyable, fun activities. Again, visit everplaysocial.com and sign up today. Welcome, everyone, to the All About Nothing podcast, kind of daily show. It is Monday, May 18th, 2026. I am Barrett Gruber, host of the All About Nothing podcast. You can follow me across all social media at Barrett Gruber. We're going to kick off the week the only way we know how, with just enough information to sound like we know what it is we're talking about. Got a big show lined up for tonight. We're pulling back the curtain on a double feature drop across the big media network that you need to add to your feeds immediately. We're also tracking a completely bizarre medical claim from the executive branch regarding a literal resurrection elixir, which sounds like the opening scene to a low-budget zombie movie. And of course, we'll wrap things just in time for South Carolina's summer heat. But our main story tonight is a deep dive into the absolute peak of American legal comedy and corporate-level gymnastics. Today, the news broke that a massive settlement had been reached in the $10 billion lawsuit. Now, the headline by itself sounds standard, but when you look at who sued whom and who signed the check, it turns into a masterclass in political theater. We're talking about the president, his former defense attorney turned acting AG, a federal judge getting completely sidelined by a footnote, and nearly $2 billion of your hard-earned taxpayer money magically transforming basically into a political slush fund. So pull up a chair, grab a drink, get comfortable. Let's get started. And before we dive into the national headlines, I've got to give some massive love to the home team because the big media network is absolutely firing on all cylinders this week. First up, Dr. Jamil Brooks and Bill Kimler over at Black, White, and Blue in the South just dropped episode 89. And the title alone tells you everything you basically need to know about the vibe. If nonchalant needs a picture. If you are not locked into what Jamil and Bill are doing on a regular basis, you are actively missing out on one of the most rare, most unfiltered, and honestly the most entertaining political breakdowns in the entire region. And I have to say internationally too, because they seem to be very hyped up over their international draw. On this latest episode, they sit down for an incredible conversation with Zion Khalifa, who is running for the U.S. Congressional District, South Carolina's 2nd District. Yes, he is going directly after the seat currently held by Joe Uli Wilson. It's an essential listen for anyone trying to understand the actual temperature for local politics. But my absolute favorite part of the episode, they spent time breaking down this magnificently painful, secondhand, embarrassing romp moment where Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evett got publicly grilled by State Representative Justin Bamberg. He asked her a pretty baseline high school civics question: how many members are actually in the South Carolina House of Representatives? And podcast listener, she completely blanked. Total dial tone. Absolute crickets. She had no clue whatsoever. Now, look, I'm the first to admit that math can be hard. But Pamela, you literally work there. Your office is in the same building. That is the equivalent of a commercial airline pilot pulling up to the gate, looking out the window, and asking the co-pilot, hey, by the way, how many wings are on this thing? So go subscribe to Black, White, and Blue in the South on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube to hear them completely roast that situation. It was fantastic. Tied directly to what Jamil and Bill were talking about in this episode, they dove heavily into the reality of what's happening with the Supreme Court gutting the Voting Rights Act and the absolute mess surrounding redistricting and gerrymandering in this country. Between the constant redrawing of district lines behind closed doors, the legal battles over who gets represented where, and the open threats that we are hearing daily from legislative Republicans and the administration regarding voting access, the ground beneath our feet is constantly shifting. And because of that, you cannot afford to assume your voter status is safe. They are purging rolls, they're changing polling places, and they're moving boundaries while we are all sleeping. So I need everyone to listen and do something incredibly important right now. Do not wait until the week of the election to find out if you've slipped into a different district or dropped from the rolls entirely. Seriously, pause the audio, open a new tab, and go to theallaboutnothing.com/voter. We have set up a dead simple, incredibly fast form. It's right there on the webpage. It takes less than 2 minutes to check your voter registration, confirm your current district, ensure your voice actually counts. Again, that's theallaboutnothing.com/voter. Go do it right now. Protect your vote, because honestly, nobody else is going to do it for you. And honestly, while you're clicking around the network site, bigmediallc.com, you can also head over to the All About Nothing podcast, because my latest episode just hit the feed. It is a two-part, or it's part 2 of my exclusive interview with Idaho U.S. Senate candidate Denny LeVay, titled Revolutionizing Rural Healthcare and Federal Policy. The Idaho primary is literally tomorrow. Of course, if you're listening to this on Tuesday, which a lot of you will be, May 19th, the primary in Idaho is today. So the timing of this drop could not be more critical. In part 1 of our conversation, we got deep into Denny's incredible blue-collar background, his journey overcoming immense personal trauma, and the fascinating time spent in a monastic living. But in part 2, we dive straight into the weeds of the federal policy and his absolute crusade against our broken, bloated healthcare system. We talk about the radical transparency needed to stop vertical supply chain price gouging by corporate insurance monopolies, and how to actually fix rural healthcare so it serves real, everyday people instead of just padding corporate overhead and executive bonuses. I thought that it was a pretty powerful, straightforward conversation with a guy who's genuinely trying to turn Washington upside down. I'm not saying that I would vote Republican in Idaho, but I enjoyed the conversation with him, and I think that Denny's a really good guy, and definitely should at least be the nominee for the Republicans in Idaho. So go binge both parts of that interview right now, the All About Nothing podcast, before the polls open, or while you're standing in line. So, all right. So we're going to get into the top story tonight. And honestly, you cannot make this stuff up. If you handed this script to a Hollywood producer, they would reject it for being entirely too unrealistic. Today, we reach the absolute zenith of legal comedy in the United States. Official court filings documents dropped this morning showing that Donald Trump has officially resolved his massive $10 billion lawsuit against the Internal Revenue Service and the Treasury Department. For a little bit of context, Trump filed this lawsuit back in January in his personal capacity, demanding a casual $10 billion in damages because a rogue federal contractor leaked his tax returns to the media a few years ago. And to give you even more context, it basically showed that there were years that he didn't pay any taxes, or that he paid a bare minimum of taxes, like $700 something. And the tradition of the office of the president is that presidents always disclose what their taxes are. It's always been the case. Every president except for Trump has always disclosed their taxes. Not saying that it's right for this particular situation where someone went out of their way to go ahead and leak his tax information. But let's be honest, he should have just done it. He said he was going to, and then he didn't. It's almost like everything else. Mexico's going to pay for the wall. They didn't. I'm not even going to get into it. All right. So let's just pause and appreciate the sheer, beautiful absurdity of the physics around this lawsuit. Trump filed this as a private citizen, but he also is currently the sitting president of the United States, which means Donald Trump, the private citizen, was suing the United States Treasury and the IRS, two entities completely staffed, operated, and run by, drumroll, Donald Trump. Federal judge in Miami overseeing this case, U.S. District Judge Kathleen Williams, looked at the whole situation a few weeks ago and raised the ultimate common sense legal question. She ordered a hearing to determine if this was even constitutionally allowed under Article 3. She basically asked, is there any actual legal controversy here? Because the guy suing is literally the boss of the guys being sued. She pointed out that Donald Trump was legally standing in front of a mirror, pointing a finger at his own reflection, arguing with himself, and demanding $10 billion from his own wallet. She even quoted Trump's own public comments back to him, noting that he openly bragged about how he was essentially negotiating with himself. And if that doesn't sound like fucking dementia, I don't know what doesn't. Or what does. See? Dementia, maybe. The court even appointed a group of prominent independent attorneys, including a former Solicitor General, to look into it, and they filed a brief saying, hey, this raises the serious specter that the defendants and their government attorneys are just operating the president's personal direction. Yeah. You think? I mean, so Trump's legal team realizes the judge is onto them. They see the writing on the wall. They know Judge Williams might just throw the case out completely, and you can't play a game of chess against yourself and claim a tournament prize. So what do? Well, today they filed a motion to dismiss the case. But they didn't just walk away empty-handed. Oh, no. They put a tiny magical footnote at the bottom of the filing, and in this footnote, Trump's lawyers argue that the motion to dismiss is self-executing. They literally wrote that no judicial analysis is appropriate. They basically looked at the federal judge and said, thank you for your time, Your Honor, but we negotiated with ourselves in the hallway. We are completely happy with the terms that we gave ourselves, so we're going to go ahead and close the file. Please don't look at any paperwork. And what exactly did they negotiate in the hallway? Well, Trump agreed to drop his personal lawsuit, and in exchange, the Department of Justice announced a formal creation of a brand new taxpayer-funded entity called, and get ready for this, the President Donald J. Trump Truth and Justice Commission. And inside this commission, they have established a compensation pool called the Anti-Weaponization Fund. And how much taxpayer money did they inject into this fund? It is exactly $1,776,000,000. $1.776 billion. Because nothing says unbiased fiscal responsibility quite like a highly specific historical number used to brand a federal slush fund. You almost have to admire the marketing department of the DOJ for this one. So according to the reports, this fund will be used to pay out massive cash settlements to protect allies, lieutenants, and hangers-on of Trump who claim that they're wrongful targeted and suffered from lawfare under the previous administration. And guess who is explicitly eligible to apply for a chunk of this $1.7 billion? The individuals charged in the January 6th Capitol riot. In exchange for this massive pool of cash being set up, Trump also agreed to drop 2 other civil damage claims worth about $230 million, his own total there, related to the older investigations into his first term. Now, Trump himself technically isn't allowed to he isn't allowed to get a direct check from the specific fund, but the terms explicitly states that the entities and businesses associated with him are allowed to claim. And it gets better. Reports show Trump is also demanding the IRS issue a public apology to him and completely waive any ongoing audits of his personal taxes, his family, and his businesses, which is incredibly convenient. Considering investigation reports include he could owe upwards of $100 million in back taxes on a single property in Chicago if the IRS actually finished auditing his bills. It is a masterclass in efficiency. It's like suing your landlord, getting elected to the HOA board, firing the landlord, voting to pay your friends out of the neighborhood pool fund, and passing a rule that says nobody's allowed to check your property for code violations ever again. But wait, we haven't even gotten to the best part of the comedy routine. Who is the guy at the Department of Justice who signed off on this brilliant $1.776 billion settlement? Who is the acting attorney general running the show? That would be Todd Blanche. And for some of you, if that name rings a bell, it's because Todd Blanche became the almost attorney general running the nation's top law enforcement agency. he had another job. He was Donald Trump's personal defense attorney. He was the guy sitting next to Trump in a New York courtroom defending him against criminal charges. He got rewarded with a top-tier gig at the DOJ, and now he's overseeing the defense of the government. So let's map out this legal closed-loop system. Donald Trump sues the government. The government's defense is handled by the DOJ. The DOJ is run by Trump's former personal lawyer, Todd Blanche. So Todd Blanche, the acting attorney general, sits down across from the lawyers representing his former boss. They have an intense, grueling negotiation with each other, and they naturally conclude that the American taxpayer should hand over $1.7 billion to Trump's political inner circle. Blanche actually put out an official statement today with a completely straight face saying, "This is a lawful process for victims of lawfare and weaponization to be heard and seek redress." He even told the media recently that this type of direct management from the president should make every American happy because it shows a chief executive ensuring his cabinet is hard at work. If I were anyone else, I would have to respect the hustle. It is pretty close to perfect, an airtight conflict of interest you've ever engineered in human history. I mean, it's nearly perfect, if not for the intelligence of most of the country. They completely cut out the middleman. The middleman in this scenario being an independent judicial oversight, separation of powers, and basic legal ethics. Democratic lawmakers are currently screaming into the void trying to pass legislation to block the funds, and ethics watchdogs are having a collective aneurysm. But according to the footnote, it's already a done deal. The art of the deal is officially dead. Podcast listeners, we are now living in the glorious era of the art of the footnote. Now, speaking of things that completely defy all logic, medical science, and basic reality, we're going to stay on the theme of the executive branch because recently Donald Trump got in front of a microphone at a press conference, and instead of sticking to the usual economic talking points or infrastructure updates he's so good at, he decided to casually drop the plot of a sci-fi horror movie into the news cycle. Out of nowhere, he starts talking about a brand new medical breakthrough, a drug that he claims can literally, and I am quoting him word for word, bring dead people back to life. He stood at the podium, called it a miracle, and described it as a beautiful, beautiful thing. So hold on a second. It sounds like some sort of resurrection elixir. And we are in 2026. Just to make sure that's clear to everyone, this is the year 2026. Honestly, I have so many logistical questions about this, how it operates. First of all, who exactly is conducting the clinical trials for this? Are federal scientists just walking into morgues with a clipboard and a syringe going, all right, let's see what happens when we poke Larry in the toe? Secondly, have these people learned absolutely nothing from pop culture or cinema over the last 50 years? This is virtually the exact plot formula for how almost every single zombie apocalypse movie starts. I'm a busy man. I do work on this podcast. I have a dog to feed. I have kids. I'm not trying to fight off a wandering undead horde in the grocery store parking lot while I'm just trying to grab a gallon of milk. But look, let's look at the silver lining. If this resurrection drug actually exists and actually works, and we can genuinely revive people from the dead, maybe we can use it to bring back one of the founding fathers from the 1700s. We can bring them back to South Carolina, sit them down at the Capitol, and have them finally explain to Lieutenant Governor how the state government functions and how many seats are in the room. It's just a thought. It could solve a lot of problems. It's a lot to get through. Let's transition to some quick hits just to see what else is rotting in the fabric of society this week. First up, let's head over to Tennessee, where a high school student completely flamed her local school board to their faces in a clip and you got to look this up, that is rightfully blowing up. Here's the backstory. During a previous school board meeting, one of the adult grown-ass elected school board members looked at his teenage high school, this high school teenage girl. She was speaking publicly. He committed into microphone that she was hot. This old white man on microphone tells a student from a high school that he is a school board member overseeing, and just completely, creepily, unprofessionally, and entirely out of line for a public official tells this young girl under the age, she was hot. Well, she got back to the microphone this week for a public comment section, looked the entire board dead in their eyes, and called them a room of cowards for trying to sweep the incident under the rug and protect their buddy. Absolute boss move by the student. It was a total embarrassing disaster for a room full of grown adults who apparently forgot they were being recorded on high-definition live stream for the entire community to see. So good for her for making them sit there and swallow it. Next up, let's bring it right back here to our own backyard, South Carolina. Santee Cooper is officially pushing a proposal to raise residential electric rates by over 9% over the next 2 years. 9%. Because apparently just existing, breathing the air, trying to survive inflation, and keeping the lights on in 2026 isn't quite expensive enough for the average citizen. They want a premium fee for it now. I want to give a massive shout out to utility companies for their impeccable timing, always finding the right way to make the upcoming summer heat in South Carolina just a little bit more painful and a lot more expensive. Truly, public service at its finest. I know Dominion here is also trying to get their raised rates. It's great. Good work. Corporations that are really just seeking to increase their profits over the concerns of the well-being of their clients, their customers. I don't know what these people see the people that are paying for these services. I don't know how to fix it, but I can honestly say that maybe they need to do a little better reading the room. I don't know. To wrap things up tonight, I want to circle back to Black, White, and Blue episode title I mentioned earlier, If Nonchalant Needed a Picture. Really got me thinking about the concept of true, unbothered, nonchalant energy. We are living in a society where every single person is dialed up to 11 basically all the time. Everyone on our timeline is outraged. Everyone is screaming into their front-facing cameras. Everyone has an immediate, furious hot take about basically things that didn't even read past the headline of. It's exhausting. I genuinely think we need to stage a cultural intervention and bring back pure, unfiltered nonchalance. I'm talking about the elite level of calm where your house could be actively on fire. The fire trucks are pulling up to the driveway, and you're just standing there on the sidewalk in your black Crocs, completely unbothered, looking at your neighbor going, well, it's a good thing I've already brought the grill outside. That is exactly the energy we need to survive the rest of this year. The next time life hands you a 9% utility rate hike, a primary election, we're going to need to survive. Look at the multi-billion-dollar federal self-settlement or a presidential press conference about zombies. Just take deep breaths, channel your inner nonchalance, realize the circus is going to keep going anyway, and just keep it moving. And on that note, it's going to wrap up tonight's edition of the Kinda Daily Show. If you dig the show and you want to keep the train rolling, do me a massive favor, hit the subscribe button right now, leave a quick 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening on, and share the episode with someone who in your life who maybe needs a laugh to get through the week. Make sure you head over to theallaboutnothing.com/voter to get your registration squared away. Go show some major love to Dr. Jameel Brooks and Bill Kemmler over at Black, White, and Blue in the South, and check out part 2 of my interview with Denny LeVay over on the All About Nothing podcast. Again, big thanks for everybody watching. Thank you very much for listening. Don't forget, you can follow me at Barrett Gruber across all social media. Again, thanks for liking and hitting that bell. Please give us a 5-star review, leave a comment, and until next time, you all stay safe, be kind, and keep your hands to yourself. The preceding podcast is solely owned by the host or hosts and is distributed by Big Media, LLC. Copyright 2026.